Hello, and thank you for joining us at Dumb and Drummer again. This is episode 15, and this week we have Jonathan Greene, an independent drummer from North Carolina. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. It's a nice Saturday morning for me, afternoon for you.
Yeah, happy Juneteenth. I don't
Oh,
mean to
yeah,
bring that
June.
in there, but it is now a federal holiday, so I guess I can. It's not political; it's apolitical now. So,
Yes, absolutely.
Real quick, for people that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
okay. I am Jonathan Greene. I play drums. I teach drums, and I am a delinquent YouTuber. And I play a lot around town. I've played several styles of music. I play mostly jazz fusion. I play in dance bands and basically anything else that people need me to. And I'm also like moonlighting as a photographer, even though I'm really, really new at it.
Hey, you gotta start somewhere. That's awesome, though.
What kind of
Uh,
camera you got?
So this is a Fuji X-T4, and I'm really happy with this because it's just been a super long road. I started in the Canon landscape, but COVID forced us all online, and the old Canons have an auto shut off. So I knew that they wouldn't work for me. So I basically traded both because I had two cameras. I traded both of my cameras in for this guy, and it's just been a blast to work with.
Nice.
I can already tell it's a nice camera because it looks all crisp, and then you're perfectly crisp, and everything around you has that slight, like you can just tell it's a nice camera just by the like, Zoom meeting.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I promise you I wasn't trying to stunt on you guys. This is just how I teach. So this was here. This was here when I got here. I promise.
Yeah.
I just got a crappy MacBook camera.
I mean, I was like, I have a ring light on my camera and it like zooms and stuff, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be a great upgrade, and it does look better. But that's the thing about cameras, and I think we were talking about that a little bit before too, is that like there's always somebody who seems to have a better camera image, you know?
Yep.
Absolutely. And none of that stuff matters unless, I mean, if it's quality content, it's quality content. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like for me, I got stuck in the weeds with aesthetic for so long that, I mean, now I'm sort of settled, but I shouldn't have been paying attention to it as much.
So
Oh, good.
let's just jump into the questions then. Tell us a bit about what you're working on right now. What projects are you currently doing?
So my biggest focus is my delinquent YouTube channel, Dramosophy, which I took a little bit of a break on it because I feel like social media is the best and worst thing that's ever happened to us simultaneously.
Agreed.
And I just got tired of the pressure of feeling like I had to create content and not feeling like I had something to say. If I'm going to create something that has my name and my face on it, I want to believe in it, and I want to believe in everything that I'm saying, not just spit out something just to feed the algorithm. So I stepped back from it for a while, and now I'm kind of about to try to hit it fairly hard, at least with some quality videos that I can look back on and really be proud of.
Right on.
I have an improvisation band project called Vintage Astronaut, and all of the music is improvised.
Oh
All
wow.
of it. It's like this, like a lot of people have done that. Like Avishai Cohen has done it, and we just get together and we play in a room. We listen. We try to like remember parts and basically make something make sense from starting from nothing every single time. Everything that we do isn't usable, but sometimes it is. And so we have
That's cool.
records that can be found at vintageastronaut.com. I'm sorry, I guess it's okay for me to plug, right? That's why I'm
Oh, of
here.
course.
Absolutely. Plug away.
Cool. And my band, my fusion band, Anamika, I always spell this wrong. So it's Anamika. It's Sanskrit for one with no name because we couldn't figure out a name for the band.
I,
Um,
I've, I actually have a funny story about someone with that name, Anamika.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, real quick story. So I'm at a bar. I see a bartender, think she's cute. What was it? I forget. I was trying to. I asked her for her number, and she shot me down. And then I saw the A on her back and I was like, what it stands for? And she's like, it's my name. And I said, I'll make you a deal. If I can guess your name, will you give me your number? And she said, okay. So I waited till she went in the back and I asked another bartender, hey, what's her name?
Ha! Ha!
She
Nice.
never answered my call. It's okay.
Ha!
Because, like, okay, so did you do it on the first try, or did you pretend to guess first?
Oh no, I made a few dumb guesses first.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, because what is every time I'd go up to order a beer, she'd give me 3 guesses, and I did 2. I went up twice, intentionally bombing every time, and then the third time I went up, I got it on the second guess. And she seemed to get it, and I'm sure that once I left or she conferred with a coworker, he was like, "So he asked me your name."
Ha!
So
Man, she
yeah,
really
that's
did not want
my
that.
story of knowing as someone named Anamika.
She really did not want to go out with you, bro.
Apparently not.
Well, maybe she didn't. Maybe she didn't want to go out with a liar.
Or maybe
you know what? That's not a that is a valid point.
maybe she liked girls only too. I mean, there could be a lot of
She could have a number of reasons. It was just more playful than anything. She was having fun with it too. I totally took the sneaky route and just asked someone her name.
I mean,
Fair enough.
I appreciate the hustle, but yeah. So so improvisation bands. I have a question on that. How do you book gigs? Like, because I know for like my band locally, our genre is not really as easily digestible for a lot of people. So like you being are there other improv bands you can get on a bill with, or venues that are more improv friendly?
So even though we're an improv band, we do have a style, and that style meets kind of where we all are, which is this is like electronic jazz type of thing. So and a little bit of hip hop too. We do really well like with festival stuff, like that type of thing, because basically like we're kind of a jam band if you want to look at it kind of that way. Mm-hmm. So we kind of fit in that vibe, and those guys just want to dance and have a good time. And so anything that sounds good, anything that has a good vibe, they're down for. I'm lucky. Winston-Salem is an arts town. Okay. So we tend to get gigs because they're looking for weird or they're looking for expressive, and the Arts Council seems to be fairly encouraging to like art here. So
okay,
we can't get like dinner gigs or pop gigs, but we do okay.
That's rad.
Good.
So you have a very unique approach to working on odd subdivisions like 5, 7, and 9. Tell us more on the motivation for that.
Motivation. Okay. So I feel like that type of thing is just an extension of my personality. I tend to get kind of techie or deconstructive with things that I'm interested in anyway. And so kind of getting lost in the weeds and the particulars of whatever I'm interested in, I think that you would find like, oh, the inner workings of music or timing, and you have to learn subdivisions to really understand that. And so, and anything that was intellectual sounding or complicated or things that I didn't understand when I was younger, I gravitated to. So when I discovered like Vinny, for instance, which is a lot of our gateways to that type of thing, I think that really opened the door for me. I had this approach of, okay, I'm going to listen to a person's music, but I'm also going to figure out who that person's teachers were. I'm going to figure out what books they went through and all of these things. And studying about Vinny took me to the Gary Chafee books, Sticking Patterns, Time Functioning Patterns, rhythm and meter patterns, and technique patterns. And they specifically sticking patterns and rhythm and meter patterns are subdivision books at their heart. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand that, then you really can't make it through the material. I got stuck at certain parts of those books, and I realized that those ideas were so different. Like no one was playing that way. I think the only person that I could think that was playing that way that I could think of at the time was Vinny on things like Joe's Garage, Shut Up and Play Your Guitar, and those records. And I really gravitated towards that style of playing early on in my playing career.
Wow, that's like most people don't start with Frank Zappa and Vinnie Colaiuta when they first start. They start with like paradiddles and double stroke roll and stuff like that. So that's a really interesting.
Well, well, not when I first started. Early on, I was telling Brett that um, fusion is my heart. Like I am a fusion drummer, sort of through and through. And my dad had me play or listen to Herbie and Chick and Mahavishnu Orchestra and all this stuff. I was listening to this stuff when I was little, before I was playing drums. So I was already kind of primed towards that. And I think that once I learned my rudiments, which I did learn my rudiments first. Let's be fair. No, I really just wanted to tackle the difficult stuff because I thought it was interesting and it was unlike anything that I'd heard other drummers play.
Okay, that's fair.
Like you were saying though, you had been listening to that for a while before you played drums, so you already kind of had an ear for it. Yeah, am I right? Like you.
I mean, I think it just gave me an ear for weird.
Okay.
It's like, because I don't want to give my past self too much credit. It's not like I knew what I was listening to. I just knew that what I was listening to was different than what was on the radio.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Right on. Very cool. So are you, we already talked about some of the bands you're currently playing with. You said Anamika, and that's the improv band?
No, so we're a fusion band, and we're working on our first single actually. But
very cool.
So I have been playing the same place in Winston-Salem, where I live, for 6 years, adjusting for COVID. And that band has seen a couple of different members, but me and the bass player have always had that band. The guitar player that we have, Matt Sickles, which is, oh my gosh, he's just phenomenal. He came in and we were like, okay, we've been doing this kind of like, we're going to do covers, but we're going to do fusion versions of covers. We did a video of a cover of a Dave Matthews band, Gray Street. Okay. That's out there in the world.
Right on.
But we're like, look, we've all done the cover thing. Even though we're trying to push the envelope here, we should really start working on originals. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
Nice.
Very cool.
Just a real quick question. What is the music scene typically like? What are the genres that are typically like dominant in your area? Like what are
jazz? There are a lot of jazz sessions. There are a lot of country sessions. And there are a lot of like top 40. So those three things. There's not a lot of hip hop in our area. There's more in towns over and about an hour out. But again, a lot of jazz, a lot of like dance, and a lot of country, Southern rock.
Makes sense.
So you said that your fusion band is working on this single. Is there anything else you're working on right now? Anything else that's looking for release in the future?
Yeah. So there are a couple of releases. Billy Cardine, who is I forget, it's one of those lap string instruments. But he spent some time in India, and it's like Indian funk fusion. We recorded that during COVID. That should be out fairly soon. But yeah, I mean, mostly what I do is teach. So I'm always just trying to get better at that. And I'm trying to do more. My YouTube channel is called Dramosophy, and I'm really trying to pour more energy towards that.
Right on. Okay. So you've posted a lot about recording and not spending a lot, and your videos sound great. So do you have any tips and tricks that you can share?
I apologize. I just realized I never answered the question about subdivisions. You asked me where I...
This reminds me of...
We trailed off.
This reminds me of a great comedian, Jim Jeffries, who will start a story and then go off on like a 10-minute tangent, and then he'll throw back to the story. He's talking about being lactose intolerant, And
That
now, if
I
he
do
eats,
that regularly because of my ADHD. I'll start on one
I love
subject
it. I
and then
love
it
it.
takes off on 5 different subjects before I realize I need to
Oh
somehow bring
yeah.
this in full circle.
Like he was literally saying if a scoop he can eat a scoop of ice cream at the end of a meal because he'll shit everything out. But then he goes into a whole tangent on like gun control or something, and then he'll go back and he's like, okay, so I'm about to eat the ice cream, and the crowd the crowd just busts out laughing, because they're like it's entertaining. So yeah, but
Yeah.
please, I do want to know about the subdivision. Well, you kind of answered it. You said
Well,
Joe's garage, shut up and play
yeah,
the guitar. That's what got you kind of on that path, right?
yeah. There was just more to that story, and this is your show. I'm just saying, like, I felt like maybe I didn't answer the spirit of that question. Like, what
To
am I
me,
doing right now? I remember like the questions that I got. Like, you have an interesting approach to like 5, 7, and 9. What do
Yeah.
you do to work on those things? And that is the question that I actually never answered.
Yes. That's
So
okay.
again, we can go in another direction if you want. It is your show. I just wanted to say,
uh,
are we going to put a pin in that and come back to it, or we can be done? I don't. That's
no,
Yeah.
let's finish on the subdivisions, and then we'll go back to the recording thing.
cool. There is a group of rhythms that I have compiled that are in no way my own, that I call my rhythmic cheat sheet. And there are maybe 13 or 14, and they're not at all comprehensive. I chose purposefully to limit the amount of rhythms that I would learn per like grouping. So if I'm going from like 3-note groups, 4-note groups, 5-note groups, 6, 7, all the way up to like 15 or whatever, my job, my goal wasn't to get perfect mastery with every single inversion and every single note placement in every subdivision or with every note grouping. I wanted to have like 1 or 2 in my soul.
Hmm.
And so what it ended up doing is it created a reference for me.
Okay.
So when you think 9, like, what do you think? Do you think so that is 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, right?
Mhm.
That is a fairly popular 9 rhythm. Mine is a grouping of 4 and a grouping of 5.
Mhm.
So I'll go 1 2 3 4 1 2. All right, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1. Right, and I've been playing that same 9-note pattern for like 4 or 5 years. But anytime that I hear that interaction, how that cycles over 4 or any other subdivision, it sticks out to me like a sore thumb because I have a reference for it in my mind. Right? So anytime that you hear in a movie, don't, like, it's so easily identifiable as 7 because we hear it so much. My job was to prime myself with like raw like references so that I knew, okay, if something is 13, I actually have an experiential connection to 13 that's baked into my soul that is unmistakable for anything else. That was my first job.
Okay.
Right? My second job which is still ongoing. I want to take every single one of those groupings and play them in all of those subdivisions.
Yeah.
Right? And so let's take that 9 thing that I was doing a second ago, that 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5, that thing, that group of 4 and 5. I want to be able to play that in septuplets. I want to be able to play that in 11 tuplets or whatever, because it's not the 9. I know the 9 like by heart. Like, I'm never going to not know it because I've worked on it for so much. The only thing that I have to worry about is this new subdivision.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's sort of my approach. I'm limiting the amount of the shape of the groupings in order to give myself a reference that I will never forget. And I can, and over the long term, I'm making sure that I can play each one of those specific grouping patterns in every subdivision I know.
Like I understand the concept of or the advantages of taking 9 or 7 and breaking it down into different subdivisions and be able to play it, because that's a mind job. A lot of people like for 7 is 2-2-3.
Sure.
That's their default. But if you say, well, why don't you go 2-3-2? Then
Right.
like, okay, well that's difficult, or a 3-2-2 or something or whatever. But the but playing it in quintuplets,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole nother can of worms. Like I don't even know.
Well, it's not. It's not, and I can show you how it's not if you give me a second.
Okay.
All right. So, pardon me. I'm gonna change something real fast. There we go.
Damn, this dude is ready.
Right?
So let's see that. Let's say that you have. We take it for granted that we can just do this and like play like other rhythms like against it. What would happen if you learned other ostinatos to that respect? If you got 5 to the point where you could as easily dismiss it as like straight eighth notes, right? So you're basically baking this muscle memory thing into your body, but just like in every way that you've always done, but you're spending the time and making sure that you can do it in 5, right? So you have this thing happening over here. Well, here's like my 9 from earlier. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so if you put them all together, and pardon me, I'm going to change sound so you can hear it a little bit more clearly.
Okay.
Let me use my snare drum. The only reason that I can do that is that this guy knows 5 so well, right? It's one of those things where I've done it so much that I don't actively have to engage my brain to constantly keep up with every single little bit of information over here.
Right.
Like when we're playing eighth notes. We know when something gets wrong and is disjointed. The only other thing that I might be able to say is like if the hand doesn't want to do that 9 thing, play that 5 and sing the 9. Right?
So you're not. Yeah, this isn't a quintuplet. It's just a group. It's just a 5 over 9.
This is subdivisionally agnostic.
Okay, cool.
I could be playing in 16th notes for all you know.
Yeah.
Right, and just having those 2 groupings happen concurrently.
I always like seeing that stuff transcribed too, because if you have 2 layers, then you'll see the group of 5 in the measure of 9, and you'll see it slightly move, and then also every like 17 and 3/4 bars, it'll hit again. The pattern restart, and that's like a mind job for me. But like, here's what we're not talking about too: is the practical application of that, because there are brainiacs like you that can take this stuff and they understand it and they can apply it and everything like that to their own playing, to noodling or if you wrote music you could apply it, but like the $1 million question is, how do you apply a concept this advanced to actual like mainstream music? Like, hey, I'm gonna go track a record or I'm gonna play a gig and it's not an improv band. 5 over 9 is something like, that's cool that you can do that, but we just need like a backbeat on this song. So
then maybe I'm an artist advocate then. Because it's one of those things where, sure, I may not be able to put this in a dance situation, even though I have, without anyone ever knowing or calling me out for it. Because
the ride pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can do things and not be obnoxious. Like oftentimes it's like, when is it done? Is it done in a point where that tension makes sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So it can operate like in a fill capacity, not to obscure the groove. And so moments of heightened tension, the end of a bridge into the last chorus, or outros that get like sufficiently intense. Mm-hmm. Like there are always places that you can disguise this stuff. Playing that and making sure that you can play the actual groove under it, right? I've never gotten flack for changing my ride cymbal pattern, but keeping the kick drum locked in with the bass player, say.
Yeah.
Right? It's where this detracts from the music where you're not addressing the things in the songs that you need to address, that seems to be the problem. And for younger people, or people that aren't as experienced with trying to ride that line, you have to use some discretion, right? There's always a space for it if you're careful and you honor the song first.
Well, and that's a great point. Also, for soloing, you also have a whole different vocabulary for when you want to play a solo, because I'm sure that stuff comes out. I'm
Oh,
sure
absolutely.
linear patterns. It's like some crazy shit, and that as drummers, I know we can hear, and most of us are like, "What the hell was that?"
Right.
Like Matt Garska does that a lot, where he'll play something, but he'll nail the beat one, and so he knows how many notes are fitting in that group, and he knows how much time he has, but he still nails that one, and that's what makes me think, "What the fuck?" Like, that was amazing. But it's
Sure.
like, and Brett and I talked about this a while ago too. Like, and I think in one of the first podcasts, it was like, felt like you were getting away from the beat, and then all of a sudden you were back on. That's a cool
Sure.
feeling.
It is. It's all about that tension and release, right? You kind of, you feel it and you feel that disconnect. And then when the magic one happens, all of that is released in this like bodygasm
Mhm.
that is like, oh my, and if when it's done right, it can give you chills,
Yeah,
I
you
like how you
know?
described that. Like, it's tension and release. That's like what he was saying. When it feels like it's slightly going off, there's that tension there. It's like about to fall off the rails, and then it lines back up. And you're like,
Yep.
I
that's
feel
a
like
that's a
that's
good way of putting that.
every time I listen to the keyboard solo from Lingus by Snarky Puppy. I'm just like, and everybody else is, even the bandmates and stuff are like falling apart while that dude is playing that keyboard solo. But it's just like, talk about tension and release. That's like a master class and that sort of thing. But that's neither here nor there, I guess, because it's not drums. But yeah, that's a
No, it's not. I disagree. Like, because if there was another break in the conversation, I was going to talk about the parallels with harmony. Like, no one ever is like, okay, if you're playing a mainstream gig, how are we going to fit that tritone in there? Right? Fitting a tritone in something for its own sake is not even the right like framing of that. It's like, what does it do? Like,
yeah.
if you have a 2/5 or whatever, you're pushing towards that resolution in a very similar way as we do with rhythmic tensions like that. So I think those two things are completely analogous.
Okay, cool. I'm happy to be
No, no,
wrong.
you're right. No, you're no, like your lingus. Like you're right, and you're almost like, no, own it, dude. That's a great analogy. The lingus analogy is a fantastic analogy for this stuff. I'm saying
Well,
you're right.
oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, if yeah, I'm happy to be right. Happy to be wrong about. I mean, like, music to me is so fluid that it's just like, I'm always learning. But yeah, I would say that Snarky Puppy, just in general. I mean, not even the keyboard player, like Larnell. I mean, like, of course, but just everybody in the band's bringing such a high level of musicianship, and I do love their videos because everybody's sitting around with the headphones on. So
Right.
everybody's experiencing what they're experiencing, and it's not like, there's the stage, you are going to be in the crowd, you cannot go on the stage, you cannot interact. There's the dichotomies there, and they're just bridging all that into one. It's pretty.
Yeah, it's like they created a almost a not a virtual reality, but like a much more immersive environment for
Yeah,
that because
immersive is the perfect word. Yep, tight.
So you want to round this back up to that question we asked before we went back around 3 times?
Can you answer the questions that we were asking, please?
I am notoriously known for not doing that.
I,
Oh,
I, I
no,
bet I bet you're good at job interviews, though.
so I haven't been on a job interview in God knows how long. I am deceptively good at public speaking because my parents did me a service, even though people may not think of it like that. They shoved me in public at an early age. That's the one
Okay.
thing about church. If you are in the choir, if you do plays, all of that stuff from a young age, you learn to project. You learn how to communicate, and it's something that is not as stressful whenever you have to do it in more an official capacity. And I am really grateful for them for putting me in that situation when I was young.
Nice.
But you hated it when you were young.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But now I'm a ham, and anybody that calls me out for doing it, I just blame my parents. Just call Joan and Sam and blame them.
So, like we said earlier, you talk about recording and not spending a lot. So, do you have any like tips or tricks on that?
Do as I say, not as I do. Because it's been a journey for me, for sure. When I started out, I had my dad's equipment to play with.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I branched out on my own, I had a couple of SM50s. No, when I branched out on my own, I had like the original Shure PG microphone kit, right? Like 7 microphones for $300, which is
I have the same exact
insane.
one.
Right. Which they sound great. And I really wish I would have known that any thing that I didn't like from the sound that I was getting was my fault, not the microphone's fault.
Okay.
Right? It's like, you see shiny here. Like, I have these wonderful acquisitions that I've gotten over the years, most of the time for much cheaper than I should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, oh, these things are wonderful, without understanding that my ear has grown with my gear. And sometimes I can't separate that, like, because I'm me. I'm in that experientially. So whenever I was talking about the cheap microphones, it was as much an experiment for me to see how much my ear has grown by purposefully limiting myself to even cheaper stuff than I had when I first started.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And
it can be done
for you to use to get something good out of what little you had.
Right, because I started doing this with my cell phone, like everyone else, and I know it doesn't look like it, but I'm sorry, before cell phones were as good as they are now, I was doing it from my laptop with like old crappy like 2012 crunchy laptop audio, but I would record my drums like with that stereo channel, dump it into GarageBand and try to mix it against those professional like mastered loops that were in there. And that was really, really telling for how much like I actually did need. The low end just isn't present there, but you have to do what you can. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's crazy to hear people's stories on what they first recorded with, because I think the first drum recording, I was actually lucky, and I used a Zoom Q2N.
Oh, nice.
Which is a $99 video and audio in one. But there's a lot of people that, I mean, if you're listening to headphones and they put their video on Instagram, like, RIP your eardrums, because you're just going to get crushed. But that's all they have. So, I mean, I can't hate on that, but it's like, I wish that everyone had some sort of entry-level recording equipment from the beginning, so they don't have to have that story that we all have of, I was using absolute shit, and then I recorded with my cell phones too, and I remember when I switched from the Zoom to my cell phone, how much better the video was, and then cell phone to GoPro, I was like, oh my god, this is revolutionary. And then GoPro to DSLR, I was like, well, I've just been doing it wrong. So I think it's the same thing for microphones. You're just like, why can't I just have what I have now back when I started? And it's like, that's almost no one's experience. Like, you have to start with the shit, and then you get better equipment later on.
You know what I noticed from those few people that can just afford the very expensive equipment out the gate? They don't know how to use it, and they end up not using it. It sits there and collects dust.
Yep.
Because the only reason you know how to use a super expansive DAW is because you started in GarageBand, and you worked your way up slowly, the slightly more complicated as you went along, slightly better gear, figuring out how microphones work. But you start off buying, $1,000 micro. Each microphone's $1,000. You have all this fancy equipment. You don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
You don't appreciate it. You don't know how to use it. You didn't have to do any of the grind, and that's what I noticed when I see kids buy. Their first guitar is a $3,000 guitar. Their first drum set is an $8,000 drum set.
Mm-hmm.
They're all about it for a month, and then that thing collects dust.
Yeah. My first camera was this tiny little pink camera with the cheap, what was it, like a 110 millimeter film that would come in like a block that you would just like stick straight in.
Oh, and like it had like 2 bulbs at the end. It was like
that's
circular flat. Yep.
Yeah, that was my first camera.
I believe same, if not for one of my first cameras.
Oh, just to take pictures, or
Yeah, just to take pictures. My
okay,
first digital camera was this little like 10 pixel like Fuji fixed lens like thing that you could get from Walmart or whatever.
Yep.
wow.
My first cameras were for trying to record skate videos.
Okay.
So I went through a bunch of crappy, cheap video cameras. Still don't know crap about cameras, but
Yeah, it's for me too. It was like you got the videography, and then you have the sound engineering, and it's very rare that people are good at both. Usually, it's like, hey, you have a DSLR and your video looks amazing, but to your point earlier, it's not really quality content for whatever reason. It's maybe a little bit about what you're playing, maybe how it sounds. Maybe you have a great camera, but the camera itself doesn't have good audio, or used audio from your phone or something, and it's just like not. I just can't engage with it. So I think that's at the end of the day. Like, I want to be able to engage with whatever someone's posting. I don't really care about likes and views anymore. I want to engage. It's just like, what is preventing me from engaging, and sometimes that's the way it sounds or the way it looks, unfortunately.
And that feeling of thinking that you need something else is one of the biggest thing that keeps people from actually getting to that point, getting to the point where I just want to create something that I find meaningful. I have so many friends that are like, man, your stuff looks so good and I want to get there, but I don't have anything. And I'm like, dude, you have a phone. Get started right now. That's how I started. Like, forget what I look like, forget what I sound like, forget what I do. Just start, just make something.
Yeah, and also, like, you have to get your workflow down. So if you have $5 equipment or $5,000 equipment, you still have to edit the video. You still have to know how to get it on your phone, to get it on social media. If you want to add like hashtags, or you want to build a following or whatever, you can't just wait until everything's perfect and be like, well, now that everything's ideal and optimal, that now I'm going to pull the trigger on all this stuff. Like, you're not going to know what the fuck, like to Brett's point, you're not going to know what the fuck to do. You're not going to know what plugins to use for the microphones. You're not going to know how to edit the audio in your DAW. There's just so much you're not going to know. So like, I'm always getting ready. Like, I'm ready for Earthworks microphones and
Sure.
DSLRs with 3 different lenses and all that kind of shit. But right now, I mean, I'm working with my Samsons, and I'm working with cheap shit, and my tones sound the best they ever have. Like, they always.
It amazes me how many people don't watch the used market, and I think that there is like a apprehension for getting like a dud or something like that. But usually these days, like, websites are so protective of their reputations that there is some sort of insurance that you're going to get what you paid for.
Yeah.
And so whenever I buy stuff, I live on the used market, right? This pair of Earthworks, which is like $1,700, usually the set of Earthworks I have, I got for $1,000.
Nice.
Right? Like, there is very little that I paid full price in the studio for. It was just like, okay, can I afford it? Can I not afford it? Am I going to kick myself if I don't get this because the deal is that stupid?
I do the same thing.
Well, I think we've all been there where we're like, shit, there's either something that we sold that we didn't want to sell, that we give anything to have back, or that deal that we saw and we're like, I don't want to pull the trigger, and now we still regret not pulling the trigger on it. So that's almost 50% off.
Yeah. Like, okay. One of my favorite acquisitions of COVID was a Sennheiser 421, because it's everywhere, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? I know I have microphones, but now that everyone is coming to the space, I don't have microphones for everyone. So I'd like a solid guitar mic if I'm going to, because we live streamed during COVID quite a bit. All that stuff is on my Facebook, by the way. I didn't think that there was a viable way to do like a multicam. Just to let you guys know, me and my wife live in a house that we share with my roommate and his 2 kids. Okay. So like costs is kind of relegated, like dispersed. Yeah. But I've known him since 2004. We've known each other for a long time. He's a sound engineer.
Oh, sick.
Just to let you know. So he would run sound and camera angles from his bedroom because we were all on like the Wi-Fi network. And while we were in here, my bandmates and Amika were in here, like just playing. And
That's
we would just
amazing.
live screen multicam, like fully mixed audio out.
That's
That's awesome.
awesome.
Very cool.
Really cool.
But that, I mean, it didn't start that way, as like to your point. So, but now there are apps that can tether iPhones together in a very similar way.
Yeah.
I knew a band that was using, I don't know if they ever implemented it live, but I know for their rehearsals, they were using their iPhones as their monitor system.
Yep.
Yeah. My buddy has a Bluetooth wireless mixer in the practice space, and everybody has faders on their phone through an app, and they can control the levels during rehearsal. They can all have their own headphone buses, and it's all wireless. So there's definitely a rabbit hole. I love gear. It is intimidating, but the return, man. Once you have the stuff dialed in and it's reliable, and you have your presets, and you know it's just like the quality of like we haven't had any guests. I mean, there's maybe one other person that had video quality as good as you, but no one has ever done a multi-angle through Zoom. So just the fact that you can do that, I mean, it's subtle. You just played a pattern or whatever, but having the freedom to be able to do that is
Yeah.
right.
But
I was going to say, whereas we'd have to be like, hold on, let me get to the drum
Yeah.
set.
Let me lift up my yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my camera in. Like for some reason, my lighting is off. I got to choose another place. But like shit like that, like I'm trying to get my camera to focus reliably, and here you are doing multiple angles.
But so I've been a professional drum instructor for about 12 years. COVID changed everything. I had to like leave the music store that I had a studio in for like 5 years. But I ended up taking, because you know you're paying studio rent, you know, hundreds of dollars a month to have that space. And I just decided, it's like, look, if I can retain most of my students during COVID, I can justify this. I can justify a switcher. I can justify an additional camera, and try to make teaching online as immersive as I can, so they can see everything. They can see the close up on my hands and what my hands look like. They have an overall view of the drum set that they can do. So this is like my professional rig. This is what stays connected to my computer. Like I only take my main camera out when I do fun stuff, but all of this stuff is like my business. This is what I do for a living.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, and having that dedicated space, it's like everything is sacred, and and you've worked your ass off from what it sounds like to get everything to where it is now, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So when you don't have to pay that hundreds of dollars a month, and you look at the sheet going forward, and it's like, okay, cool. I can eat that. Like I can like go out to dinner more, or I can reinvest that expense back into making this better.
Like I was talking to my bandmates about this too. We were talking about getting everybody having individual headphone mixes through the back of my interface, because I found out on the Scarlett 18i20 that you have 2 headphone outs, but then there's 4 more on the back.
Yep.
So if people want to have their own, you just get a little adapter over. So people want to have their own thing, and then there's like a controller that you download where everybody can have their own headphone mix. And then I was like, well, why don't we just mic up the guitars, and I'll bring everything into my DAW, and then when we do teasers, we can mix it. And then we're like, well, let's get some more lights. Let's get scissor arms, and let's mount those, and then let's get GoPro adapters. And oh, you have GoPros, so we'll bring in GoPros and stuff like that. And the quality of the content has gone up, like I would probably say 3 or 4 times from the first teasers that we made. But the whole process is fun. Like it's not even really about posting it. It's about just like fucking around with different options. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about being a musician too, is that like we have options. It's not about the end result. It's about like staying in the moment. Like I want to, because I'm sure you have other shit that you want to do. There's
absolutely.
More camera angles, or different camera angles, or different equipment, or different mics, or different drums, or different artists, or different places to record. There's endless.
I've done that. Like I did my first setup for a worldwide live stream this like in January for another person's podcast. where we were a guest on that, one of the guests, because it was like a conference type of thing. But like I brought all my cameras, I bought my switcher, and like when we weren't presenting, I was behind the cameras and like making sure that everybody could see that. And then at the end of it, delivered like the show, like the whole thing, so they could post it like as content to their socials. And I've done like other shoots for people. So no, like all of this stuff, you're right. All of this stuff does translate outside if you can see yourself beyond the drums. If you can see yourself beyond why you did it, you can get more utility out of it.
Hell yeah.
I like that philosophy with it. You learning how to use, like, because I know a lot of people, like, I know a lot of drummers that ended up doing photography or videography because they started filming themselves, filming stuff, and then they ended up finding another passion in videography or photography.
Oh, dude, like playing in wedding bands for the past decade, I'd say a full third, maybe a fourth of the people, the photographers that I talked to were musicians.
See, there you go. So on that about gear and cameras and such like that, what are two pieces of gear that you can't live without?
Ooh, I knew this question was coming.
Only two.
I know. So when you say gear, like, are you talking, because you can't talk computer, right? Because that's like not even a piece of drum gear.
Okay,
like who can exist without a computer?
Scenario: you have to fly to a gig. There's going to be a simple, just backline kit there. Nothing fancy. What do you need for that gig?
But just two things.
Oh, okay. I'm bringing, simple backline gig. I'm bringing my snare drum, which I guess is a great pivot for one thing that we haven't talked about, which is endorsements. I'm bringing my snare drum, and I'm bringing the cymbal that's not actually on my drum set right now, but I will. You know what? This guy.
Is it a ride?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this ride and my snare drum, I think, are the ones that I would take.
Okay.
And just because this is it can do all things ride, right? It doesn't matter how quiet or how loud. It doesn't matter how washy or defined. Like, I feel like this ride can get it done. This is my, because I am endorsed by, or I endorse, depending on your philosophy on that thing, Istanbul Mehmet. So this is a Kirkor K. This is one of the first ones that I got from them, and it is just lovely. It sounds fantastic. Another thing I don't have right on me, because I didn't know how this question was going to go. Reverie drums, which is in my town. Can I talk about how wonderful it is to have a relationship with whoever makes your instruments?
Oh my god! I can imagine, but I mean, I've never had the pleasure. So
to juxtapose that with the perceived clout that you get from saying that you have a relationship with a company, right? To me, the thing that you want is a relationship with somebody that cares, that you trust, and that can get you what you want. Those are the things that's the thing that's important. A human being is important, not the gear, right? I'm sorry that I have so many thoughts on that, but that encapsulates it. The snare drum that I have that I use the most is this single ply walnut snare drum. That was actually, the shell was bent by a friend of mine that I met in a former life in like an indie band. And he went out to Portland, Oregon, and learned how to steam bend shells.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry?
One ply, so it's extremely thin.
Well, yeah, and it has re-rings too, so it has to, in order to keep it in its round or whatever, to keep it round.
I was like, is that thin? I mean, you dropped that wrong. I mean, it's just like,
I'd be afraid to take that on me to a gig.
Yeah, kind of how I feel about acrylic drums.
I do have an acrylic drum set that was a gift. I'll tell you that story another time if you want to hear it.
Okay.
But this drum is special to me because, like, somebody that I know that I spent hours and hours in a band with, that we've had conversations and, you know, those clashes, and, you know, we've met each other's families, and we've been through that stuff, right? He made the thing, but he wasn't in a place in his life that he could feel like he could finish it. So he gave it to Timothy Roberts, who owns Reverie, Stack Ring, and a whole bunch of other things. And he was like, "Hey, dude, I really want to give this to Jonathan. Can you finish this for me? Like, the hardware and all of that stuff." And he was like,
Yeah.
"Sure." A couple of months later, I have my baby.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
I actually have a copper shell that it wasn't. I think he actually ordered it. He didn't like roll it himself or anything like that, but he did the patina on it. A buddy of mine named Justin Neeb,
Okay.
and when you said you have that connection, I feel the same way. I feel that connection to my snare because like I didn't just like buy it from some store, or I didn't hit up my Sweetwater rep and be like, hey, I want to buy this thing. There's an emotional connection to it. I just wish that I had that emotional connection to like literally anything else on my kit.
Right.
All of it's very capitalistic, very emotionless,
Right.
a transactional type of thing. A&F is in Austin, so whenever I get like $20,000 to buy a kit, I will have a relationship with a local drum, maker.
They sound so good.
Real
They
quick,
sound
I
so
want to
good.
say
They do.
I'm jealous of people like you guys who have found your snare. I still have not found my snare drum. I have yet to find a snare drum that I'm like, this is my sound. This is my snare drum. All of my snares have been off the shelf from Guitar Center.
Most people have like these are my 10 snare drums. They don't have one, and they will not hesitate to brag about it. But yeah, I don't really. I tried out. I got my free floating Pearl 8x14 with the intention of trying a bunch of different shells to answer that question. And the short version is brass. And that's the only way I know that is because I bought literally like 5 different shells, and then I've thought about all the different drums I've played in the past. Birch Babinga would be a close second for a wood choice, but brass just has all the elements that so I think it's just trial and error. But then I would recommend reaching out to like a custom person because to John's point, like you don't want to buy that out. Like snares are just like, I don't know, man. Like people will disagree, but I feel like that's the most like intimate thing for most of us is the snare because it can kind of make or break the feel of the kit.
Right.
It's the thing. I mean, you hit it the most. I mean, you hit the snare more than anything else on your kit. So typically, so
Yeah, like maybe with the kick drum ride and the hats being in a close second. Which to Mamet's point, everything is hand hammered with Mamet. Like they don't have the like facilities that a lot of places have, and it's also a much smaller company. And so I feel like oh my gosh, Carl, the artist rep with Mamet is. I think I've heard their cymbals, but I feel like I wanted to be a part of him with just how nice and personable and how reachable he is. Like it's just like everything has to be down to that, right? You want to be in relationships with like people that you feel want to talk to you, that you feel that you can talk to, and that that there are these two-way streets with. So the people part of it is so important.
I've heard that so many times from. I think that's come up on this podcast a bunch too. Is that like everybody? I think when we were talking about cymbals, like everybody makes good cymbals. Like I mean, of course, there's going to be outliers. Like CB doesn't make good cymbals. Groove percussion doesn't. All that kind of shit. First act cymbals aren't going to sound good. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
But most of the major cymbal companies are going to make a good product. So it is more about like how do I feel about this experience versus like, well, I can't have my XYZ custom crash with the rivets in it, so I'm just crushed. It's like I'd much rather have a relationship with the person that I'm working with. I mean, that's
absolutely.
Maybe other people are like, well, I care more about the product, and it's like, well, maybe you need to re-examine that.
I agree with you because that's where I'm at with I'm an Axis percussion artist, and I really haven't even felt like I want to try another bass drum pedal because I have a really good relationship with this company. I don't even have an inkling of a want to try another. They're great pedals, but I'm not going to switch anytime soon because Axis. I've been using Axis for a long time. They work great for me, and they're right up the street. I can go over there and get my pedal serviced right before I have a gig or a tour or whatever, and they're always super cool dudes.
I'm glad that you. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying I'm glad that you framed it that way. I mean, both of you, like everybody makes good stuff. And I'm not going to say that, okay, I played a jazz jam this week and some of my students came out and played on my kit. And it's very rare that I get to sit from the other side and hear how good my stuff sounds. Like, I'm not, like, I don't want to be bashful about that point. Like, I do love what I'm playing, but more important to that is the feelings I have about the people that made it.
Right.
Okay. And if I can be connected to it in that way, because I mean, I've been the consumerist. I'm just going to pick up a Sabian pack that's pre-made for you because here are all the sizes, you know, that you don't get a chance to hit beforehand or hear beforehand. I've been there. There is a difference.
Yeah. Yep. You're definitely solidifying my choice on my next kit to make it someone that I can shake their hand, I can have a conversation, and that I mean that's the same way with cymbals too. Like I have bought cymbals but I'll try to do like the my cymbal route. I'll try to do like this exact cymbal because that's something that always has puzzled me about people too. Is that how do you order something that you haven't played? You know, how do you order a pair of shoes without walking in them first and looking at them in the mirror and seeing how they look and stuff like that? So the cymbals, you know, that they should sound amazing and you should brag about them in that situation, in my opinion.
They so Mamet doesn't have a warehouse on this side of the country. It's only in LA. So if I have a feeling that I want something, I'll get as many examples of that cymbal on the internet. But the warehouse guy will actually find that cymbal and play it for me.
Oh, sick. Okay.
So, and then like we'll A/B back and forth, and I'll tell him which one, if any of them, I want. And it's been like that with all of them.
That's another really great point too, because you can line up 4 Meinl, you know, Byzance, Benny Greb sand rides, and you can hate 3 of them and absolutely kill someone over the 4th one. You know what I mean? Because that one is absolutely perfect. And that's another thing too. I wish we could go to the factory and have different choices because they're definitely not all created equal.
Right.
I wish retail 100%. Locations actually had good selections. That's what I wish.
Yeah.
That point.
And it's not
just entry level crap to try to pawn it on everybody that walks in the store.
Guitar Center has really upped their game with their Meinl selection, but it's not playable. They have that metal vault thing that's always locked that has like 100 cymbals in it, but you can't play any of them. So it's not,
and then the ones that are on the wall on those like wall hangers where you actually can play them. They're mostly like, you know, ZBT style lines, entry level, or just out there cymbals. There's not just like, oh, a good crash.
They're all the lines, but it's like everybody has to be represented in this tiny ass room. You know, they have to represent 5 different companies and 4 different lines per company on the wall. And I'm like, all I care about is Meinl, so I'm gravitated towards that. So being able to play on it is definitely huge.
And one more thing about having a relationship with a person is that you get an education about the product that you would not get otherwise.
Oh, yeah, because they're the experts.
Absolutely. Like with Timothy, he'll talk me through plies, woods, bearing edges, all of these things to not only tell me it's like, okay, because I may say, I want X, and then I'll describe the sound. And he's like, are you sure? And then the education starts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, and then eventually I'm like, okay, I'll describe a sound to you and you work it out.
Yeah. That's perfect.
That's really cool. That's awesome that you have that type of relationship where you can get down to the nitty gritty of exactly what you want and they're going to figure it out for you.
Yeah, to lug placement, to to hoops and bearing edges, all of that stuff. He now knows what I like and he knows how I play. So why would I come feeling a certain way, not being the expert, where like I could undermine like what I actually want,
and not just trust his judgment.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
So real quick before we get off of that, are there any other endorsements you have you want to shout out real quick?
I use Polynome. Um,
Nice.
I love that app. It's great. There are other things that I want to talk about that aren't endorsements. Like reflex practice pads are great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also have ProLogic practice pads, which are also great. Black Magic is the switcher that I have. They make one for less than $300. Don't get a single capture card if you plan on doing the multi thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to bite you. Just go ahead and get the switcher. You can grow into it. Um, I don't like GoPros. I know they're utilitarian. There are just problems with it. There are just like little bugs in them that I've found that don't work they don't really work for live streaming or this
No.
type of environment,
I can't
right?
even hook it up as as a wireless webcam. Like that's a known issue with like every GoPro.
Yeah.
Even mine, my 7 has, and apparently it's throughout most of the 7s, has an overheating issue.
Yep.
So if I leave it running while if I'm just filming myself going through take after take and just letting it run, eventually the camera dies and I don't know it died.
Right.
A quick playing devil's advocate here. If you are an up and coming drummer, GoPros are absolutely fantastic to use. If you get a Hero 9 right now, the overheating issue has been mitigated. The battery life will last for about 6 hours.
Oh wow.
I mean, you'll need to swap it out. I mean, it will overheat before 6 hours, so you need to like swap it out. But the most impressive thing on that, to me, in my opinion, is the microphone. Like they don't need to make the microphone. Like if I'm biking or kayaking or skateboarding or whatever, I don't need a high quality microphone. But as a musician, I listen to like just the organic playback. It's very 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 good. Like I use it for all my practice pad videos and stuff like
For
that.
the cost of the camera and the size and all of that, yeah, they pick up some decent sound.
Yeah.
Counterpoint.
Shoot.
Go for it.
I would much rather use an iPhone. I would download Filmic Pro, which has a log profile. So like DaVinci Resolve is a color grading / video editor that is free. They have a free version, right? So this is not things that anyone can't get into. Buy Filmic Pro for $15. Spend $100 on like a Rode Mic Go or something like that, and then the little dongle that goes into your iPhone, so you can bypass the microphone in your iPhone. And I feel like you would have a better rig. That's just my opinion.
Counterpoint. I don't use iPhones.
Okay, or an Android, because everything that I just said is applicable to Androids.
You could just use your phone, use a detachable microphone. So yeah, I would say whatever works best for you.
Right.
What was the app you were talking about again?
Filmic Pro.
Filmic?
Yeah, like
Okay.
Film IC Pro. It has stabilizer in it. It has much more range with its settings as far as like exposure control and things like that. Again, it has its own log profile, which is film editing jargon, but basically it increases the dynamic range and flexibility in editing and post.
Okay.
Awesome. And also to support your point, a lot of people I've seen on Instagram, I'll leave comments and be like, "Hey, what is this? Like, what camera are you using, and what are you using for audio?" And they're like, "Oh, this is just my iPhone. It's nothing else." And they probably went back and edited it or did something. But I think I'm trying to think of who it was. I think it was Stan Bicknell. And I was like, "Yo, your stuff sounds and looks really good." And he's like, "I'm just using my phone. That's it. I'm just using my iPhone." So typically, I mean, iPhones are going to be better for like a one-stop shop for everything. And I've seen it.
Ian Maciak does the same thing. Do you guys know him? Ian hits drums. Dude, he is like...
Oh, wait.
Yes. I know that.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy that does the breakbeat stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
iPhone.
Yeah.
And so before he started doing multi-track stuff, because he hasn't always had that stuff, he would just be in his garage and figure out the best placement between the drums and the speaker, like a loudspeaker.
Yep.
And that's how he would do it. And so he just got so good at listening to the acoustics of the room that he could fool you into thinking that like he had more like actual gear.
There's another drummer. We were gonna have her on, but she didn't want to come on for whatever reason. But she uses one room mic,
Okay.
And I was amazed at that as well. Like that's so crazy to me. Like how good sound you can get from just one microphone. Or people will use the Glenn Johns thing where they use like one or two room mics and just a kick drum mic, and people will be like, "Oh, it sounds so good! Like the drums sound so natural." And the tone, it's like that's because they are natural. It's just
Right.
room mics, and
Right.
I love hearing drums that sound like fucking drums and not a bunch of crossfaded or mixed samples and triggers and stuff like that.
2015, 2016, like those 2 years, all of that stuff that I did, most of the stuff that I did was with one mic. And it was really interesting because no one believed me. Like, seriously, no one believed me. I would tell them exactly where it was. I'd even take a
Yeah.
picture, but no one believed me.
You,
But
you get the right heads, the right tuning, the right room, the right dampening. You get the right distance for the phone
and
away from the
and your
drum.
internal mix with your playing. Like if that's it, nothing will tell
Yep,
you how you sound like more than recording with one microphone.
And you know
absolutely.
who blew my mind with that? We had Timbo from Kino on, and
Yes.
I've been watching his page for a while, and then he tells us he only uses one room mic 90% of the time, and I was like, wait, what?
Yep.
That's it? Where you're getting that sound out of a single microphone?
Yeah.
He said he actually experiments with because he's got a really long like hallway type of room, so he can put a room mic really far away, up high. He can put one down low, whatever, and then it's just whatever the mix needs. If he's like, oh, the snare's not on the top of the or the snare's not in the front of the mix or as close to the front of the mix as I want, so he'll bring a closer room mic in or use a plug-in or something like that. But having those options is so crazy. And I think Benny Greb posted a video because he has a drum set in his basement, and then he has a bathroom with like a shower stall, and he put the room mic in the shower stall, and he's like, guys, and he isolated the room mic, and it sounded like a cathedral verb, like room verb. And I was like, it's just a fucking shower, man. It's like it's like a tile shower. That's it, and it sounded amazing. So
I
blending
did
that
some
into the mix.
I did something very similar with Tim from Reverie. We were getting his stuff together because he knows that I've been doing this, and he was like, "Hey, man, can you come over and kind of like help me out with this?" And I did something very similar. Attached to his space, there was a bathroom, but I faced it. There was no shower in there. I faced it towards the mirror,
Okay.
about that far, and the sound that we got was phenomenal. So yeah, that's
And that's crazy too, because you can put it in the shower, you could put it above the shower, you could put it behind your toilet, you could put it
yep,
in you could put it in a closet.
right.
I know a lot of cats say they put a room mic in the actual hallway.
Hmm.
Like, dude, in my studio space, if I could just keep the door open and put a mic out in the hallway, it's just like this maze. It's like all these little studio rooms, and it's all no carpet. It's like just concrete floors.
Hmm.
The sound I would get. I mean, I need to try because I mean, I could just put my room mic out there and just do a couple takes or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah,
great stuff. I think that's all the questions we had.
We got
yeah.
one more. Last
Okay.
question. So I like asking, this is my favorite question to ask. So what was the moment when you realized you wanted to play drums or that you realized you were a drummer?
Um, I'm gonna give you guys the least glamorous way I can put this. I saw someone. So I've been able to play drums basically all my life because I sat next to my dad in church and watched the drummer, right? Something about just doing that from a young age, you know what you're supposed to do. And I just was always able to mimic at least the basic groove.
Right.
Um, but a friend of mine got a drum set and he started getting better than me. That's the real answer. I've told much more like glamorous stories. Like, yes, the drum set did, in fact, arrive like on 9/11, like around that time.
Wow.
Yes, I did go to his house around that emotional moment and like help him like set his drum set up, and all of that stuff did happen. But the reason that I took it seriously is because he was improving and I wasn't.
Okay, well, I mean that's not. There's a lot of egos in drums, so there's a lot of egos in being involved in being a musician.
The only reason I'm a drummer is because I wanted to be a guitarist and all my friends got better than me. And when we wanted to start a band, I was like, well, I'll play the one instrument that no one else is playing because that makes me, by default, the best.
Fair enough.
There you go. There you go.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank
Yes,
you guys for
sir.
having me. This was
Great,
fun.
man. Yeah.
I love your recording rig. I'm sorry, I was blown away when you switched to the snare. I was like, that's all set up. That's nice.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's your setup is super good, and I've kind of admired you from afar, like for quite a while, just for the because you have a balance of your sound and your aesthetic, and I mean, you take a lot of pride in what you do, and I mean that's very evident to anybody that has watched more than a couple of your videos. That
Even just
you're
talking
very
to you can
dedicated to
tell.
your craft. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, this is kind of a new thing for me. When I first came into this space, I actually felt like I didn't belong here because all the people that I looked up to were much further along than I am.
Mhm.
I'm 36 years old, just for a reference.
When's your birthday?
I'm learning that a lot of that stuff fades away with age and perspective. So as the older I get, and the more I'm still practicing, I'm still learning things, but this is all art. This is all self-expression. At some level, yeah, we're all putting in the work, but this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to help each other. If we can keep all of those things in mind, then like there doesn't need to be this soul-crushing expectational thing. We can talk like this, and we can learn things that we didn't know before, and make each other better in a bunch of different ways. So that's sort of where I am now.
Hell yeah. I'm 36 too. When's your birthday?
January 5th.
Okay, all right. I was like, this is gonna be crazy. If there's another drummer in Austin that we have the same birthday,
Okay, when's your birthday?
May 21st.
Okay, so you're recently 36.
Yes, recently. Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
So we're not too far off.
Nah. But yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and
Thank you so
we'll be
much.
following you for your next endeavor. And if you ever come to Austin, or if you ever come to Long Beach area for any gigs or anything, make sure you hit us up, and we'll grab a beer or something.
Absolutely. I will probably not be close to Long Beach until whenever NAM happens again.
Hi, Nick.
But
I will be when NAM comes around this next whenever it does happen again. I will definitely be there. So hit me up, or I'll hit you up on Instagram or something like that. We'll get together.
cool. I'm looking forward to meeting both of you guys in the flesh at some point.
For sure.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Take care.
You too.
Take it easy.